When?
Where does love?
Love.
Love, yeah.
So love means, but we think love is an expression. But if you feel love is an expression, whatever be the expression, whatever may be the expression of the consciousness, it has to come and go. So it is not the real meaning of love. So the love really what means is that if you separate yourself from the other and you assume some responsibility for yourself and thereby you identify yourself to a portion of thing, then only you are somebody other than the other thing, other person. So the division alone is against the love. But if you do not find anything as a separate entity, then only it can be called love. So the love is not an experience. So whenever you don't separate yourself as a separate thing, then only you are against the love, against the oneness. So actually love means some oneness.
Love means
oneness. Being one, but it is not a feeling. But we cannot directly feel the love.
It's not a feeling. Is it a state?
Is it not? It is not a state.
It is not a state.
But whenever you divide yourself from something and somebody, then only you are against other things. Some friction is there. So whenever you do not create, when you take yourself to be somebody, then there is nothing other than you. There is no nothing opposite to you. When there is no duality, then there is no friction between you. So actually, when there is no friction, then only it can be called love. So the feeling of love is different. So for example, when you are in a good meditation, you may have the different kind of energy field. So in that energy field, you may feel some kindness to each and everybody. So it is a different kind of feeling, but it is not real love. So it is a expression of feeling. So love is not the expression of feeling.
Separate from God, that is not love. There cannot be love if one is feeling.
So when we feel ourselves as a separate entity, then only we limit ourselves. So when we limit ourselves in a concept or in a feeling, then there cannot be any union with the other thing. So the freeing from some identical, the freeing from the separation, the free from the separation alone, then the freeing from separation can be called as love. Because then there is no duality.
Over problems, God, for that to forever to happen, whatever is going to happen, then can that then lead us, God then?
So here, when we take some responsibility, our responsibility alone divides us to be a separate person. So if you do not take any responsibility, being free from responsibility is the loss of our separate identity. So
if I do not believe I'm the doer.
Doer.
Yeah, take the responsibility.
Yeah. The responsibility makes ourselves to be somebody and makes ourselves to be a doer. Okay. So our responsibility alone is the problem.
That is then in the way of love.
But we need not worry about the love. If you worry about the love means you are giving importance to the separate identity. So if you give importance to love, the separate identity also again gets importance because it demands love. So it is another demand.
But you said that if there was oneness...
The oneness is not at all a feeling. Oneness is not at all a feeling. So for example...
So it's not that there's a different kind of love within oneness.
You cannot feel love.
You cannot in oneness.
Oneness cannot be felt. So you are not against the oneness because that alone you can come to in a negative way. For example, you imagine the total room is the absolute reality, and you are a limited being. You place just some round here, and but we cannot hold the total room within the small round. But the total room is the reality, but we enclose ourselves as a small round, and we cannot bring all the totality within the small round. But if we, instead of that, if we break the border of the round, the total everything becomes one. So what we have to do for the unity, you have to dismiss the boundary around you. So how we have to remove the boundary around us is that our responsibility alone put us as a boundary. So our responsibility, this I want, this I don't want, our demand. So our demand creates the responsibility. So if you free from our demand, free from our responsibility, thereby we remove the boundary. So when there is no boundary, so there is no difference between the room and the round, because there is no round at all. So whenever you keep yourself somebody, then you are against the other thing. So if you're not keeping yourself to be somebody, then there is no necessity to unite yourself to the other thing. So you need not unite the other thing to within yourself. I need not unite yourself to the other thing. So the necessary thing, don't limit yourself with a boundary.
It seems to me that in that moment where I'm to the place where, oh my God, I can't do it anymore. I give God. There has to be in that moment. I because I'm bound still. I quite haven't given up responsibility for my own salvation or whatever you want to call it. I'm still bound. I still think I'm separate. So in that moment of giving it to God, I think at that moment I really have to have a lot of love and trust that God can take care of me, that God can do it. Otherwise, how can I give it over to God? I mean, in that moment, I think I need a lot of love and trust that God can take care of me, or whatever. She will do it. I can't just do it with God X. No, I'm bound still. I'm still bound. So X is there, right? So for me to be able to sink into surrender, I have to have a lot of love, trust, all that, and then God can take me.
So when you put the responsibility, whether you have the idea that He will look after you in a good way, but if you put the responsibility of God, then what happens to you is created by God. You have to take everything is what is happening to you.
But for me to take that movement, that jump, that one step towards God, I have to have a huge amount of love and trust.
But let it be.
Okay.
You may have the trust, but you may have the trust He will look after you. And if you put the trust and you look after everything, and afterwards, if you put your trust and you surrender to the God, so afterwards, whatever happened to you, you have to accept. Everything is given by God Himself.
Right.
So you should not hesitate. So as yours.
But okay, what comes after the surrender? That I don't know.
No.
That I have nothing to be part of. In the moment of getting there, I can't do it alive. For me to be able to take that step, there has to have been some love developed for that X, for whatever God is, that X consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Something, love, attraction, something has to pull me so strongly to that. And I have to really have faith, trust, all those things to be able to make that movement, that step to surrender. So what comes afterwards? Okay, that's something different. I don't know what's going to come afterward. But
what is coming after us alone is important, not before that.
How can I talk about what's afterwards when I'm not there yet? That's just an idea. That's still an idea. I'm separate right now. So,
So here, after you, whatever, maybe you have some good faith or anything, so after you put everything in the hands of God, So afterwards, some sorrow comes to you, some unhappiness comes to you. How will you meet that unhappiness?
In that moment, I think, when I have completely given up responsibility, and because of tremendous amount of, I can let go now, at that moment, so I'm already free. That's that big step. That's that big letting go. So after that, there's no sorrow.
So,
I would think.
but you cannot say like that. But what are the, if sorrow comes, what will be your action? So, there cannot be any sorrow.
Sorrow comes before I surrender, or do you mean
after surrender?
After surrender, I wouldn't call it sorrow. I don't think that this is intellectual. After surrender, I would not be calling it sorrow. Before surrender, I call it sorrow.
Whether you call it sorrow or not, some feeling comes as sorrow. But what will be your action?
No idea. I haven't done it yet. I have no idea.
So here,
I would think from all my intellectual understanding that I will have no reaction. But because I haven't taken that step, I can't tell you what my reaction is going to be. No idea.
So here what is important is that we have to accept all the feelings, whether it may be a happiness, whether it may be a sorrow. So we have to take everything as given by God Himself.
Before or after?
After. After alone is important.
Before is very important, because that's where I am right now. Before is very important to me. I don't care about after till I get there. What's important to me is what I am feeling right now, and my journey there.
But here I am speaking, not giving the importance of surrender. I am comparing surrender to the understanding. So surrender also works like that. The understanding also works like that. As a comparison alone, I give importance to the surrender. But I am not advising you to surrender. So surrender, surrender is a rare thing. Everybody cannot surrender. So surrender is a rare thing. So one among million alone can make surrender. But otherwise, other persons cannot make the proper surrender. So surrender is not an easy thing. But
understanding is also not an easy thing. Understanding also not easy. Understanding is not easy. So anyway, understanding is just of the intellect. I'm not interested in finally all of that. I want to go towards. I want to go towards surrender. That's what I want. Why do I want more understanding? I've read all. I don't want more understanding. I want surrender.
So surrender. If the surrender is there, then there is no other work. So if you are able to surrender, then you are a rare person. You are one among a million. You are not an ordinary person. You cannot be an ordinary person. If surrender is possible to you, if surrender is very easy, comparing with understanding.
That's why I'm here for that very reason. I'm not here to dance around all the intellectual stuff and all the understandings and all of that. I'm interested in what is it going to take for me to baby step or whatever, but towards surrender. I mean, otherwise, why am I here?
If surrender is it is very important and surrender is very easy, that is the best way for you. Then you cannot inquiry. The inquiry is disturbing the surrender. So inquiry is against the surrender. So the surrender is faith. If you give faith, if you inquire, faith cannot be. So you cannot come to surrender through inquiry. So inquiry is the way of intellectual. So surrender is not the way of the intellectuals. You have to put faith. The faith alone is the way of the surrender. So if you have the faith, you can surrender, and the same result you can have. There is no, when the surrender is there, all problem is over. Then there cannot be any problem. What is?
For you, what?
Faith means trust. Faith upon God. Trusting God. So if you have the trust, if you have the faith, so we cannot create the trust and faith through inquiry. So inquiry disturbs the trust. Inquiry disturbs the faith. Because it wants some calculations. It is cunning. So all our inquiry is a cunning one. Cunning one. It is a calculation. It is a calculative one. If you do
So
something.
if that's what it's doing, why recommend it? Why recommend an inquiry into the nature of the mind if it's cunning and it's not to be trusted? And in fact, if the mind is actually doing the inquiry into the nature of the mind, and the mind is not to be trusted, it's not a very good thing to be doing. If the mind is so cunning, it's going to trick you, I would think.
So mind is tricky, and it will tricky not to cheat anybody. It cheats itself. For the way by the tricky, by the cunningness, it is not cheating others. It is cheating itself. That alone it suffers a lot. So it is also maybe forgive if you cheat others, but if you cheat yourself, it cannot be forgiven. It is a waste of energy. So that is the foolish action of the intellect, that it cheats itself. So we have to understand the foolish nature of the mind. So if you understand the foolish nature of the mind, we cannot trust the mind. We not place any responsibility to the mind. If anybody give any responsibility to anybody, if you are a trustworthy person, so the intellect is not a trustworthy person. We cannot put any responsibility to that, and it will not solve the problem. So that is different. That is even though it is made by the intellect, the trust and faith is a different action. It is innocent action of the mind.
It's an innocent
Action of the mind, innocent action of the brain.
So then how does one move more towards faith?
So here, if you go on the way of faith, we cannot inquire faith. We cannot inquire how we can get the faith, how can we get the trust. So it is not the way through the inquiry. So it is not a way. So we can inquire for the understanding, because now for the understanding alone we can inquire. But for the trust and faith we cannot inquire. We cannot go that way. Is it?
A mystery?
Which one is mystery? The faith?
Yeah.
So because it is unquestionable, because somebody may think like that, and we cannot find why are you thinking like that, we cannot question him. So if we question, and he cannot answer, because it is nature. He innocently, he may not have any reason for that. He innocently believes something, he innocently believes God will do everything. There is an innocent action. He will not ask, he will not clarify whether I am going right or not. He will not ask like that.
Yet it seems that let's say a seeker comes to a guru, and then in the company of the guru, inquiry takes place, like the inquiry we're doing now. This is all inquiry into the nature of mind. So that inquiry takes place, and through the inquiry, the seeker develops more peace of mind. The intellect starts to get quieter. Arising out of that comes more faith in relationship to the guru. He has faith. I've been with this guru for a particular period of time. He's answering my questions and taking away my doubts. I'm becoming quieter and quieter. And then love and faith and trust in that guru starts to arise. This happens. And so isn't that a point where both faith and wisdom come together? Or do they always stay separate?
But this is not the real faith. So the real faith is innocent, but it not has any reason. The gradual development of faith is not at all a real faith. So if you create some faith like this, so we can create gradually we can create understanding, but we cannot gradually create faith.
How's that? Because when the seeker approaches the guru, he may have no faith. A friend may say, "Hey, I met this guy."
So this I am not speaking about the real faith.
Hi, everyone.
Sorry, it wasn't that quiet today.
Hello,
Some bag is left.
Hello. Some bag. Thanks. But what I am telling, faith is absolute faith.
Absolutely.
Absolutely good. With thereby we put everything in the hands of God. There will be no question no more. Whatever you do is good for me. That alone is here we can trust something because if you rely upon some person, we have some conclusion, we have some clarification in something, and we can verify how he explains, how he behaves. Thereby you can come to a conclusion and you can trust him.
Yes.
So that is different. Whether you can take something from him or not, that you can decide. That is a kind of trust. That is a kind of faith. But the absolute faith and absolute trust is different. There we cannot question him no more. We put the total surrender to him. Whether you do a good for me or not, I don't mind. Whatever you do is good for me. So it may be a sorrow, it may be a pleasure, whatever it be, I don't mind.
Right.
So then only you lose your identity. Whenever that means you do not have any self-identity. So thereby you lose yourself. So losing yourself is the absolute surrender. Understanding has process, but surrender has no process.
So surrender has no process.
No process.
For you, then it was no process? For you?
For you.
For you?
For me,
Yeah, for
for-
you. Can I ask a question?
I am not advising surrender. I am advising only understanding.
You're
I am advising only intellectual understanding. I am not
addressing only understanding.
understanding alone.
Okay. Okay.
No, surrender is rare, very rare. They will not. You discuss we cannot get the surrender. Through inquiry we cannot get surrender. It is not an intellectual approach.
No.
We put down all the intellect in the surrender. We put down all the intellect.
And you, sir, when it happened to you, had you done all the inquiry and then understanding came?
But
For you?
For me, understanding came only because understanding me, this is coupled with this many kind of experience. I undergone many experiences and way, and I inquired what is the nature of the experience, and thereby gradually develop the understanding. And I go here and there, and here my own experience and the experience of others, experience of the ideas, and I go here and there and come to that understanding. After else alone, I come to the understanding. So I am not on the way of the surrender. So I cannot.
Does the way of understanding and the way of surrender take you up to the final place? That final destination is reached by the way of understanding or the way of surrender, or it's different?
So to me, both are same. Because when the person who is in surrender does not have any self-identity, because he loses his self-identity, he does not demand anything. So he accepts whatever, everything is God. See, he does not find anything other than God.
Mm-hmm.
He accepts everything as God.
And the way of understanding in that process, whatever that inquiry is, the sense of I and identity is eliminated through knowledge?
So when we understand something, then we do not, whenever we assume some responsibility to do something, then only the identity becomes powerful. If you do not have any responsibility, even though we have some identity, it is powerless. For example, if you take this, it has some weight. But if you put the same thing in the water, it loses the weight. So in this way, if you do not have any responsibility, even though you have some identity for yourself, the identity loses weight. So whenever it assumes some responsibility to do something, then only the identity gets weight. So otherwise the weightless identity will not be any problem. So whenever you lose this identity, then you are not against anything. So,
and that came to you through inquiry of...
So to me, everything is happened only through inquiry.
It's through inquiry.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what is your relationship with Ramana?
Ramana,
Maharshi?
for me, so I have gone through many of his teachings,
You've gone through many of his teachings.
but I have not personally seen him.
Right.
I gone through his meeting, gone through his teachings.
Uh-huh.
His teachings also made some help to me.
All day, every day.
One. வாங்க வாங்க இங்கே மூணு இங்கே ஆட்டோவில் வந்துருந்தாங்களா ஆட்டோ நிற்க சொல்லியிருந்தாங்களா இதில் இருக்காங்களா அதில் போயிட்டாங்கல்ல சரி
வெயிட் பண்ண சொன்னாங்க.
ஆமாம்
அதுக்குள்ள வீட்ல ஃபோன் பண்ணிருந்தாங்க.
ஓ ரைட் சரி வாட் டிட் யூ ஆஸ்க் மீ
Was the in day, every day, always inquiring,
so each and every moment
each and every moment?
our mind is seeking something. The very seeking is also a kind of inquiry. Seeking something is a kind of inquiry.
Right.
So we seeking some remedy, some relief from ourselves. It is a kind of inquiry. Because we feel some problem, we want some salvation, we some relief from our problem. It is a kind of inquiry. So everything is an inquiry.
You were saying that first there's the questions, and then the questions must come to an end. In that, because that's the quietening of the intellect. So when the intellect quietens, is that gets quiet, there's absolutely no more questions, no more movement towards questions. Is that what allows liberation to take place, or is that liberation itself?
So actually the liberation is already there. Only because of some demand, we interrupt the liberation. So because we select something, we want to dismiss something, then only we unnecessarily interfere the liberation. Actually the liberation is our natural state. We are not creating liberation, we cannot create liberation. But when we want something, thereby we demand, we put some demand, thereby we interfere with the liberation.
So what's the relationship then between the quietening of the intellect and the recognition of liberation as already here?
So recognition of liberation is natural because we do not struggling, because we feel all the problems solves naturally. So we can understand, we can consciously feel that everything goes away naturally. And because everything is in open, there is no secret, it is a happening. So when we feel something, when we do not struggle with our own feeling, we can see all the feeling goes away naturally, because nothing can exist for them a fraction of a second. All comes, all goes. So that is a natural process of our feeling. But when we struggle to hold off something and remove something, then we are unnecessarily struggling with the natural flow. For example, if a river is going very fast, and if you put our hand across the river, some water will circle around your hand. So that is what we are doing. So you are unnecessarily putting your hand across the flowing river. So if you do not put our hand across, all the flow, all the feeling comes and goes naturally, just like a flowing river. So that is our natural state of our consciousness.
So when I'm asking you questions, the answer always brings me back to the same place. The answers to your questions, that there's nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
And I need do nothing, and that all the doing is getting in the way. So
here we have to accept everything as natural. When we something, for example, if you have some sorrow, if you think it is coming unwantedly it comes like this, then we try to remove that. But if you think it comes naturally, then we will not disturb it. So if you take everything as a natural course, then we will not interfere with that. So if you think something has come without against the nature, and it should not found place here, and then we try to do something. So if you think all comes in a natural sequence, in a natural way, if you accept everything as a natural flow of life, if you do not question anything, why do you come unnecessarily? If you feel all things comes in the necessary way, in the good way, in the right way, if you accept everything in the right manner, then everything goes away naturally. Then there is no struggle within ourselves. Then there is no struggle between the intellect and the consciousness. We accept all the happenings of the consciousness as the natural happening.
So the quieting of the intellect, even that quietness that comes from the quieting of the intellect, when it feels like there's a settling, that too is an expression.
The quietness itself also the expression of the consciousness.
That's an expression.
And not the expression of the intellect. The intellect is only imaginary world. So all the content of the intellect is only memories, or dead memories. The language of the intellect is only imagination. But the consciousness is not imagination; it is real. So even if you find some peace or find some silence, everything is in the form of in the consciousness. All feelings, including silence, everything is in the conscious level. Even in the quietening you said, it is also because it is not disturbing. Thereby you have some silence. By the weighing of silence, you mean the quietening of the mind.
Yeah.
Actually, the only because the silence you mean the word quietening, but actually the silence is not belong to the intellect. It belongs to the consciousness.
So it's the natural flow.
Right? Going must be in the as a process of solving. So there is a definition. So thereby it has made ourselves as so then only it can guiding the gets powerful. Power of the I am is like it is powerless. There, but it loses weight. Looks like free from sorrow, powerful. Where you intend to do, thereby you.
That I thought, rendering in the form when we really are able to go into that.
Everything is in the flow. When you do not yourself in your standing, you are also in the flow. So if you are open, we come to a conclusion that I know if you are open to very simply, then I cannot even shake the bundle. That here, then only if that it is verified this, so you need not find it is like this and test it for in your own life. Testing something to find out why they always want to avoid death.
So
Here we are not murder other. We have to understand it is a sub-death. We are not killing other person. Interfere with the natural. The matter is what of your understanding. So it is not a conscious way naturally. First of all, you need not very conscious understand of this understanding logical world. We must hold alone.
They don't get their own way. That happens without.
I am happy always, worry, I should not have any fear. Express whatever it comes, I feel guilty for. Purity of this, because of the intellect, then only some expression. So you yourself are liberated. You are honest, but our intellect is disturbed.
Why doesn't the child?
He is in the liberation. Intellect alone disturbed. That is why the child, we are in the liberated step, do everything through the intellect.
When they
Go back.
They don't go back.
Don't go.
How it seems to go
So
from
only gradually develop the children, there is no wisdom, we don't, it is intellectually, thereby we are postponing everything. The experience of it, we can go away from the body. So whenever we are in the body, our dynamic is only the ground expression, something only the expression.